Viewers, you are welcome to our program, Nigeria Decides 2023 Issues and Voices. This is a series of programs sponsored by the National Working Group on Governance and the United States Institute of Peace on the issues placed before Nigerians on the elections. We have run a series of these programs, and we will continue as the elections take place and in the post-election period. I will start by introducing my panel. Dr. Chris Kwaja is a lecturer in political science from the Modibo Adamawa University in Yola. Cynthia Mbamalu is a leading rights activist who is mobilizing the youth towards elections and other issues in Miaga, Africa. Austin Aigbe is a civil society activist, and Dr. Nwokolo is from Next Year, one of Nigeria's leading think tanks that has done a lot in terms of polling for these elections we are talking about. Chris, let's start from you. Tell us a bit about the National Working Group on Governance and Peace Building.
Thank you very much, Prof. Incidentally, you're a member of the working group. In 2016, the United States Institute of Peace, in response to some of the rising cases of insecurity in Nigeria, specifically northern Nigeria. That was when the issue of insurgency, communal conflicts, and other forms of organized crime in the northwest region of Nigeria. So the entire north was engulfed in this conflict as well as violence. USIP at that point felt there was a need to bring together a group of civic actors drawing from the religious, private sector, other professional groups in the country. And on that basis, a group of individuals were put together. His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence, Cardinal John Onaikan, Professor Itayewu Jega, your humble self, Ambassador Fatima Balla, Dr. Nguyan Fese, Aisha Murtala Mohamed Oyebode, Dr. Usman Bugaji, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the current Chief of Staff to the President, and my humble self were all members of the working group. And the goal was to look at how best we can respond to this challenge of insecurity at two levels. The first level was at the policy level, strategic engagement with policy actors. The second level is at the community level, identifying voices that we can amplify when it comes to the search for sustainable peace. And that's what the group has been preoccupied with over time. And the group was quite active in also supporting the establishment of peace-building institutions at the state level, like the one we have in Plateau, the one we have in Kaduna, and the one that is in the offing in Adamawa State. We've engaged other states like Sokoto and Benue with a view to supporting the establishment of these institutions. Election has been one key area, but the focus for the working group is how do we ensure credible, peaceful, free and fair elections. It requires individuals, communities coming together to speak against violence, to resist any attempt by any group of persons to instrumentalize identities, be it ethnicity or religion, as a currency for mobilizing people. Because part of what we've seen with conflict in Nigeria today, be it natural resource conflicts in the context of the farmer-herder conflict, is the role that the instrumentalization of identity is playing. The same with insurgency, the same with organized crime in the Northwest. We are also dealing with the issue of secession in the Southeast, which is popularly known as the agitation for a state of independent state of Biafra. All these are conflicts or manifestations of insecurity with huge doses of identities. And the job of the working group is to see how it is able to deal with these issues in a way that amplifies the voices of people who are speaking out for peace.
Thank you, Chris, for situating and explaining clearly our work in the National Working Group on Governance and Peace Building. Our topic today, Cynthia, is analyzing and assessing the 25th February elections for the presidency and the National Assembly that took place. I want to start with you because your organization, YAGA, did a parallel tabulation of the votes. And therefore, based on your findings, you can make a clear assessment of what happened in the elections and the value we can place on the numbers. Start by explaining what's a parallel vote count.
Thank you. So the parallel vote tabulation, which we call PVT in short, basically is an elections day observation methodology that has it's proven and has been deployed in other countries. And what it does, basically, the PVT enables non-partisan citizens observers to observe the quality of the voting process and to also verify if the outcome of the votes reflects the vote cast. And the PVT uses two special tools, statistics and technology. Now, statistics enables the PVT to randomly sample polling units across the country and to deploy observers to those sampled polling units. And the observers report from those polling units using their phones as they observe the process. So they send in text messages to a centralized database specially designed to take in this data and analyze it. And then the analysis is done and is shared in near real time. So with statistics, we don't need to go everywhere. And we always say the idea of random sampling is it leverages two important tools, which is stratification and randomization. The idea is because we don't have the resources to deploy to all 176,606 polling units where elections held on 25th February. What statistics helps us to do is to sample in a way that is representative of a whole. So we may not give exact figures, but with the PVT, you can make projections and estimate. And we always make examples of if you're cooking, if you want to test if the food is tasty, you don't need to drain the whole pot of soup to know if it's tasty. You just stir and you take a portion and taste, and then you can tell if it's salty or if it needs more pepper. And that's the idea of the sampling. We use a national list of polling units. Technology helps us use, it's almost like you stir and then it randomly picks across every local government. So that there's equal representation of polling units across board. And with that, we can make estimates on the process.
So this soup called elections that took place 25th February, was it sweet?
So it's just like when you cook, sometimes you cook a dish, it doesn't turn out as well as you dreamed that it would turn out. And that is what I think the election, so there were high expectations. And we do believe that it was a missed opportunity, these elections, to build on the gains from the electoral reform. However, I want to give specific findings on the elections. And we look at it from logistics part, so commencement and the voting process itself, and then later we talk results. And our findings did show that when it came to commencement of polls and the process itself, there were major challenges with late opening of polls across the country. So as at 9:30 a.m., which is 1 hour after elections ought to have commenced, only 44% of polling units had opened nationally, and which showed that a lot of polling units opened later than 9:30, and our data showed that by 12 noon, we still had polling units who were yet to commence voting. And so that was one major thing. But the other thing, there was a positive when it came to deployment of technology. The technology in these elections were twofold. One is the general deployment of the BVAS, bimodal voter accreditation system, to accredit voters. The other is the result part. So I'll focus on the accreditation part. And our data did show that the BVAS was deployed to the polling units, our sampled polling unit. In 99% of polling units, the BVAS was used throughout the day for accreditation of voters. It functioned properly in 88% of the polling units. However, in 8%, it malfunctioned but was fixed. And in 2% of our sample polling, it malfunctioned but was replaced. We can't speak much for the 1% where we did not observe it being used throughout the day. The other thing we did observe was that there were locations where elections did not hold, and INEC never went back to conduct the election. So on elections day, our sample polling units, 20 of our sample polling units did not have elections. And when I'm using our sample, because it's supposed to be representative, meaning that there were a lot more across board. And on the following day, which is Sunday, we sent back observers to those polling units. Out of these 20, 13 of them still did not have elections on Sunday, and the voters were out, but no officials present. So we are yet to find out from INEC why some locations did not have elections. The other findings that we did observe was some locations had insufficient election day materials. So things like ink pad, indelible ink were not available in some locations. Things like lower number of ballot papers, that's insufficient ballot papers to cater for the number of voters in those locations. So these were some of the other findings that we did observe on elections day. And I know that, so for us, why we say it was a missed opportunity, because when it comes to late commencement and late closure of polls, these elections, we had voting that went into late into the night in some locations. And we believe that these were things that should have been addressed before now, because we had a new law that gave INEC the power to access its funds 1 year to the elections. Unlike previous elections when monies came in late, INEC had also said they would produce materials in country, which a lot of groups applauded them for that decision. So we believe that if all of these things that were taken into consideration, INEC had better chances to at least ensure better logistics management, which we did not see. And that is one of the things that affected the process. And when it came to the other part on technology, which is the results part, now our data did show that at polling units level, the polling officials, presiding officers in particular, used the BVAS to take a picture of the results sheets from EC8A at polling units in about 88% of our sampled polling units. Because the guidelines said after voting closes, officials use the BVAS, they send the accredited data to the backend server, and they take a picture of the result and upload on the INEX result viewing portal, IREV. So we did observe that pictures were taken. The observers asked the presiding officers if they attempted to send, and in 69% of the polling units, the presiding officers said, yes, we attempted to send it. Now, the other question is, was it successful? Because only the officer who handles the technology can say it was successful. But what we did observe subsequently was that these results were not uploaded on the portal, because as at 10 p.m. on elections day, there were no polling units results on the INEX result portal for presidential elections. There were some for the National Assembly elections, but none for the presidential elections. And even as at March 1st, after the results were declared, only 70% of those results were on the INEX result portal.
Thank you. That's an interesting set of findings. So the technology, it worked partly, but partly it didn't work. Tell us a bit about your assessment of the results in terms of the tabulation you did. Were those results similar to what you had tabulated or expected from your research?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the results, and I'll leverage on one basic principle for the PVT. Now, a lot of people look forward to the PVT's data because of its ability to verify the accuracy of the result. But one guiding principle for results to be verified is that the process meets all the guidelines. And so when the process meets the guideline, it is easier to verify. But where there are challenges to the guidelines, it affects our level of verification. However, when we came to the data, we did observe that the results, as it announced by the Electoral Commission, did fall within our margin, estimated margin for the three top parties. So for all the parties, in fact, but I'll focus on the All Progressives Congress, People's Democratic Party, and the Labour Party, and the New Nigerians People's Party, NNPP, because I know it was also part of the conversation. However, because if you read our statement, we did not use the terms of verify, because it's beyond just results falling within our narrow range. It's also around what happened.
What you are saying
so
is that you expected
yes,
the winner, as declared by INEC, to have won.
Yes, from our data. However, there were certain states that did not match, and what we were able to do was to identify states where the data, the results announced by the Electoral Commission fell outside our margin. So states like Rivers State and Imo, the results announced by the Electoral Commission did not fall within our PVT estimate, because our PVT results, like I said, observers send in results from their polling units. And so it is in the purest form, because most times manipulation happens at the point of collation. And so from our data, it did show that the results for Rivers, the vote share for the All Progressives Congress, as announced by INEC, was way higher than what our data provided. Same also for the Labour Party, their vote share was reduced. What was announced by the Electoral Commission was reduced, because from our data, Labour Party won Rivers State and Imo State. But if you look at the announced result, there was a flip. So there was a reduction of the votes for the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party for Rivers and for Imo, and there was an increase for APC for Rivers and for Imo. There were some other states that fell out. These two were the most screaming, or how would I put it, the most visible, pronounced amongst the data. And I wanted to provide this in context. The question around, because we've had a lot of questions around, did you verify and did you not verify? While the data did reflect that what the Electoral Commission announced fell within our margin, and that the manipulation in the states, if you add them all up, it still will not fundamentally change the overall results, because it may just affect how many states got 25%, because you know, for the Rivers was calculated as part of the 25% for the All Progressives Congress. But it may just reduce the number, may not necessarily change the overall outcome. But the question around verification for us is a bit contextualized now, because these cases are still in court, and there are still issues around the process that needs better addressing of the figure, because we still believe that INEC created doubt. INEC did not deliver in its mandate of providing a transparent process, because honestly, if the process was reasonably transparent based on the guidelines, it would not create all these issues we have around the outcome. So at the end of it all, INEC has an important role to play to inspire confidence in the process and also in the outcome of an elections.
Okay, thank you so much, Cynthia. This is extremely useful and gives us the base on which we can continue the discussion. Austin, you are a veteran election observer, a long track record, and you follow these elections very, very thoroughly. What's your overall impression of the conduct and outcome of the 25th February elections?
Thanks, Prof. Thanks, USIP, for inviting me. It's clear to, you know, when Cynthia has spoken, you are almost tempted to say, what next to be added? Thanks, Cynthia, for bringing those data to the fore. So in this election, there was a huge expectation that led to an hurricane of citizens, voters, first-time voters who will never vote in an election. Bourgeois who will never vote in an election. People who live in Metama, live in Asokoro. In Asokoro specifically, in some poll unit, voting ended up to 12:15 a.m. The rich waited till 12:15 a.m. It shows how important this election was. It is not about, for us, personally, I try not to look at an outcome, but to focus on the processes that lead to an outcome. If the process that lead to an outcome are trusted, verified, I mean, not to use the word of PVT, but if the process are seamless in a way that everybody says that this process is okay. Come on. Even when you lose an election, you'll be glad that you lost gallantly. But in this case, here you were in areas where certain individuals would have won election, there was a stampede. And we saw all manner of pre-election notification, don't vote in this area. If you vote, XYZ is going to happen. There were not sufficient or corresponding response from the state architecture a state security architecture, there were evidences that there was some threat from certain quarters threatening certain individuals or ethnic minority in some states, that if you vote XYZ will happen to you. And that is what we saw on election day. True to those permutations, there were those clear violence in some of those states because there were pre-election warning, in quote, do not show up. If you show up, this will happen. And in other states, maybe we just talk about Lagos. Lagos is one of the states that that has been interrogated, that what truly happened in Lagos. People argue that, oh, but Lagos is owned by this. It's owned, truly. I don't really know if Lagos is owned by anybody anyway, even though Benin also claim some ownership of the part of it. But the election, we went into the election with high hopes. And when your hope is down, every other thing is almost useless. And what happened to that election, it was people saw some level of confidence in the Electoral Commission. Number one, all before the time of the election, the commission had given the maximum hope. And what were their hope? Number one, the BVAS was the game changer. The BVAS was going to eradicate proxy voters. The BVAS was going to take away cases of incidence forms. If you don't use the BVAS, you are not going to be able to vote. So you must go through accreditation using the BVAS before you can vote. And when you have voted, again, this is a transparent process. So it's not a one and enough. In any case, as Cynthia tried to say, I don't try to fragment the technology. The technology is one. It's the same BVAS. They didn't bring any other thing. This is not the time we're talking about ZPAD. Unlike in previous election, after the use of the smart card reader, then you use the ZPAD to capture the result. Then you can separate them. In this case, you had one device, which is a BVAS, who does two functions, and that two functions is embedded in one device. So we cannot be saying that you did one and you didn't do the other. You would have, that process has been altered, because you refuse to complete what you started. In any case, the INEC, as Cynthia said, very remarkable, INEC created doubt, and INEC created fake news by what it did. We now started sowing all manner of disinformation on the online spaces. You could not verify except you were in the polling unit. We saw all manner of trending from EC8A, all trending across the board. People are saying that they want this, they want that. The only place we could verify was the IRF, because we already knew the IRF was going to upload each of the results. And eventually, creating doubt. But I like to appreciate Nigerians for not taking the laws into their hands. I think that the Nigerians are the one who won this election. Whoever was declared, we have the winner until the court will decide. Nigerians stay put, knew that Nigeria was better off than anybody. Nigeria, because as Nigerians, personally, I am proud. I am proud as a Nigerian because I know I got no country else, even though I have the privilege of taking off or Japan. But Japan is not the solution. Japan is not going to be the solution.
Thank you, Austin. We are glad you are staying with us. Dr. Nwokolo, the last time you appeared on this program, you were talking about the polls you did predicting the outcome of the elections. And what your polls showed you was Peter Obi of the Labour Party was ahead in terms of the polling and was therefore likely to emerge as the winner. The results released by INEC, however, show that it was Tinubu who won. Yaga Africa, that did a parallel tabulation, have shown that that result, as announced by INEC, was in line with their projection. And only in 2 states did they see significant variation from what they had anticipated. Looking back at all this, what would be your statement to Nigerians?
Thank you, Prof. First, is for me to correct an impression what the Nestia polls, even though it called that Obi would lead, but came up to say that none of the 3 front runners will win the election, that is likely to go into a runoff. Yes, from our polling, it showed that Obi could get about 23 states, but not enough to win the presidency. And I think that was what we found out. Now, going by what happened on Saturday, of which it's very obvious that I'm presently doing an article which I'm looking at that polling cannot work in Africa with the way we organize elections, because there are factors that are supposed to be held constant. Those variables, if you look at them, you are able, because those things are supposed to be there based on the people you've polled or the people you've interrogated. So, for instance, it's no gainsaying that most Nigerians who came out, or most young people who came out to vote, or who were so keen to participate in that electoral process, was because of the introduction of technology. Most of them understand technology more than I do, and they believe it's almost like an alpha and omega. So they believe so much in it, and you could see that election technology around the world has a kind of raised confidence and legitimacy of election, which is what whoever is going to win. Yes, Bola Tinubu has been announced as the president. Of course, there's no gainsaying that is almost lacking legitimacy. Whoever is called today, whether the Supreme Court decides that every other thing is okay, he will still struggle. Just like what happened in Imo. You see people calling the governor of Imo Supreme Court governor. So he is going to still be either a Supreme Court president or an INEC president, because Nigerians are not going to believe whatever, because they had a process they trusted and it never came the way they trusted it. Now back to our polling. What our polling showed, like I explained, was to show, if all things being equal, like they say in economics, that this is the way it's likely to go. So, of which even INEC as an organization printed the 78 million or the 98 million ballots twice, saying they were preparing for a runoff, because that was what the projection said. So for someone to suddenly, out of nowhere, win an election in the same day with all these processes, so you can question every other thing, but not the polling, because the polling relied on variables to come up with what Nigerians may have said. Now remember, even in some of the discussions, we talked about what is now called the Trump syndrome. There were people who were undecided, who could move either way. Now, if we bring in the issue of the violence that took place that day, the logistic issues, where someone could have either done very well, no election was held, or where results were to be posted, it wasn't posted and all that. You could see it could have, one way or the other, distorted everything, the polling, the prediction made by most of the polling.
Yeah, that's a very key issue you are raising about conditions and processes of elections. And part of our problem in this country is that we develop complex, elaborate processes and we don't keep to them. And that creates, of course, difficulties when you make predictions or projections, rather. Let me come to you, Chris Kwaja. Maybe the story of these elections is the story of the third force, which is the Labour Party. You recall that over the years, we've spoken over and over again, why don't we have a third force in our politics? The third force, has it arrived?
The third force is here with us. And regardless of who wins the election, and I'm raising this on the basis of the fact that beyond the face of who becomes the president, there are other positions that we see. For the first time, we've seen beyond when Mimiko emerged as governor of Ondo State under the Labour Party, and how the Labour Party was also killed. And now we are seeing the resurrection of the Labour Party. This time around, we are having senators, members House of Reps. We might have governors, we might have members of houses of assembly, and all these are products of the Labour Party, which will become the third force. But my worry going forward is also about the history of party politics in Nigeria, where everybody wants to be part and parcel of the ruling party, and where the ruling party itself is not ready to engage opposition. So all it does is to swallow up these opposition parties. We might be seeing cross-carpeting of people moving from the opposition party to the ruling party. And one of it, when it comes to what happens at the national level, is that many of the legislators are more concerned about juicy committee positions that they'll be given. And in the way these positions are given, the ruling party takes on the committee chairs of those at that level. So in the struggle for that, you will see individuals abandoning the ideals or vision upon which the third force was constructed to go and pursue their own personal and vested interests. And with that, you will see the fall of the third force. And what I think we should be doing is to engage at the community level, get the political parties themselves to invest more in mobilization and also holding their grounds at that level, where individuals that are part and parcel of this struggle will see hope and believe in the third force. Lastly, the third force must be able to deliver when it gets there, because it's not just about occupying the seats. We want to see them push agendas that are pro-people, because that's what will keep the people.
Thank you, Dr. Kwaja. Viewers, we are taking a short break. We'll be right back.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Viewers, you are welcome back to our program, where we are doing a review of the February 25th general elections on the presidency and the National Assembly seats. And we've had a fascinating discussion so far on the preparations for the elections, the conduct of the elections, and the outcome, and the big debate over the outcome. But Cynthia, I want to take you back. One of the things you did so effectively in the months leading to the elections was very active and successful mobilization of young people to come out and vote. You were able to play a huge role in raising this consciousness among young Nigerians that Twitter doesn't have any vote in an election, that they should all get their PVC. A lot of them went out. So today, how do you feel? Was that worth it? Are they very grateful to you, for making them go and get their PVC?
Well, I don't speak for all the youth, but we've received interesting messages, just even as Cynthia and then as Yaga Africa. And we've had young people who said, we voted because you told us to, but see, the outcome is not what we wanted. The process did not go. Some even said, you told us technology would work, that we can download results from our homes, but all of that did not work. And for me, I think we also need to, especially for young people engaging for the first time, need to understand that democracy is a constant work. It's not, you never get to a point where you say, oh, it's perfect. There is no problem again, we're okay and satisfied. You constantly work to improve the system. And the fact the outcome you expected did not go as you planned should not keep you away from participating and engaging. Because they always say quitters never win, winners never quit. So if we begin to quit now, then we can never get the democracy we want. And that for me is what young people need to understand, that we may not have gotten what we wanted this time around. Both the process, the technology did not deliver the way we were expecting it to, and maybe the outcome a lot of young people were hoping for did not go the way they planned, but it is not the end, it is just the commencement of the process. But also tell that there were some positives. There were states, in previous elections, it's almost a given that it's two parties that would get certain states. But these elections threw up new variables where political parties were winning states where we never expected them to win, where we had people losing states where we thought they would win. Some lawmakers from parties that never knew they would even make it into the National Assembly won the elections. This was because the people's vote, the power of the people, prevailed in those communities. Those for me are important variables. And let us also learn, if you think around emergence of, just when you think about the 2014 elections in South Africa, when Julius Malema came with the EFF, he didn't win with the election, but he came up as a third force. Lots of young people moved to the EFF. But the party did achieve seats, or rather win seats in the parliament. And since then, they've consistently built their power as a party. I'm not making comparisons, but I'm just giving examples. And I think for Nigeria, for those young people, whatever party you supported, you need to learn that from every election, you learn the lessons, and then you build on towards the next elections. Some videos were showing young people breaking their permanent voter's card, some burning it, and I was really sad. Because when you go to an ATM to withdraw money and the machine does not dispense money, you don't break your ATM card. You still go back to another machine, in another location to try that. So why break the PVC because the result did not go the way you planned? I think we also need to realize that election is a lived experience, and we need to adapt experiences in our daily lives into the way we engage the electoral process. There's a reason why you say for you to get a tree cut, you have to constantly hit consistently before the tree falls. And we use that in our lives. That is how elections is too, that we try the first time, it may not work, but we don't give up. We keep trying until it works, because the democracy is a product of everyone's hard work. Foreigners will not build Nigeria for us. God will not come down from heaven to build this country for us. We, the people, young people, our generation, have that responsibility to build this country. And I do believe that we can get better the next time. We've learned. It did not go the way we planned. A lot of us are disappointed and sad, but we can't dwell and wallow in misery. We need to rise up and continue moving, because we have governorship elections coming. They are important elections, state assembly elections, important elections, and our PVCs and our numbers can still change the outcome of those elections. So for young people, don't give up. It's not Cynthia's fault, it's not Young Africa's fault. We all keep working, and we need to keep building or inspiring hope in our system. I do believe in Nigeria, and I know Nigeria would work. It may just take us time, but we'll get there.
Thank you for that very positive message, that we should keep the faith and the struggle must continue. Austin, what's your advice to Nigerians as they prepare for Saturday's elections? You have said that election of the 25th February was a victory for Nigeria. How do we deepen that victory?
It's a process we all need to own. We know, in fact, we are talking about this now that INEC failed to follow up its process because we knew. A knowledge citizenry is what matters for Nigeria, for the Nigerian state. Now, there are more knowledge. We've just learned what to do differently in the February 25th, 2023 general election. So what can we do differently? In case this part, I mean, it's just a variable you can hold constant. Let the beavers work because it worked. The beavers didn't have a challenge at all. The beavers worked. Unless in areas where political violence and all went and ballot theft and all of that happened, the beavers worked, or with late deployment of materials or voting into the 9th, the beavers worked. And the beavers have been tested consistently up from the so-called small election to Anambra and to Osun election that again very huge traction. That trust, it's what led to what I call the hurricane of voters. And it ought to pay me though, that even with those hurricane of voters, we are told that it was 24 million showed up. Whereas, with the evidences that came across the state, you cannot say that the turnout was less than the 2019 election. But by data, it is the turnout, because those who ran out when violence happened, you can count them. And there are more in those, their threshold. So, back to this Saturday election. Election provides an opportunity to choose those who lead. Whether it was yesterday, or it is tomorrow, or it is the next tomorrow. This election, we all need to go back and vote. Vote and count the vote. Part of my advocacy ahead of that election was, for your vote to count, you must count the vote. In fact, for your vote to count, you must vote. If you don't vote, your vote won't count. So if you have voted, you then count the vote. And how do you count the vote? We saw those in those pictorials, in those videos. People were counting the vote. 1, 2, that's the way to count the vote. When you have counted the vote, take a picture of the Form 60E that will be pasted at the polling unit. I know that there's some level of, that's basically out of the circulation from 60E, but it's still there in the guideline. Officials are supposed to write the result on a poster-like form, pasted at the polling unit. Voters can go and snap a shot of it and then engage by way of, because Twitter has taken over the landscape. Take it or leave it, we are living online. We can't run away from it. We can come up with a hashtag, the one we mobilized in 2019, snap and send. If we truly snap and send from your polling unit, and you are specific to your polling unit 1, Ward 2, XYZ local government, this state, this is the result, and you attach the evidence. Somebody somewhere will collate those results with AI. You assemble them and collate them effectively, and we know ahead. So if IREF is going to be a challenge, let's not wait for it. Let's do it our own way by collecting those data. Truly, vote accounting. That's the truth. Vote accounting. This one we count.
Thank you very much. I think that's also a very positive message that, okay, let's make sure we do what we need to do, and let's have other ways of making sure the polling unit results get seen by all and tabulated by as many as possible. Dr. Nwokolo, I want to talk to you a bit about voter suppression. We've mentioned violence, we've mentioned threats to people, we've mentioned attempts to dissuade people from even coming out to vote. To what extent do you think voter suppression was a factor in the 25th February elections? And what can be done to address voter suppression? Okay. First of all, what's voter suppression?
Well, any attempt to make a voter to vote either way he or she wouldn't have voted, that's one, which could be either through persuasion that are illegal or through use of physical force, including snatching of ballot boxes. So there are a lot of them. Now, if you look at what happened on 25th of February, it was massive. Some not recorded. But incidentally, one would try to commend Nigerian police one way, which is at the level of pulling boot level, they were very professional. But incidentally, that act of professionalism could be seen as a weakness, where people are being attacked and you're standing there saying because you were asked not to do anything, not to come with arms and all that. The question I kept asking is, there is no society that criminals are not known. So we knew, Nigerian police knew the flashpoints, knew at least there were people who were arrested in 2019, who I didn't know whether they were persecuted. Most of them were released on bail, and they were part of the people that acted here. In societies that work well, every football hooligan is known. Even before, and you will be, a match will go on, you will be told not to come. They will write to you. Like in the World Cup, the last World Cup that France held, there were British football hooligans who were written to say, we don't want to see you in France. We knew all these people. We did nothing. Now, let's take Lagos for an instance. They knew where the attacks are likely to happen, at least from 2019. So what did the police do? You can't be protecting the perpetrator and leave the victim. So why are you deploying police where you know the perpetrators are going to come from? And you left the victim who were attacked in 2019. So I think a lot of mapping were not done. So for me, currently we know where the flashpoints. We know the states like Imo, Rivers, Lagos, Bauchi, Gombe, Zamfara, states where the power parity has closed up. If you watch the way, wherever one party is very dominant this way, using violence to suppress voters are very minimal, because whatever you do, they are likely going to vote for one party. Now, as the demography of voting and the election is unfolding, with young people coming into the space, they are redefining who could win or not win. So these are the kind of things I would like Nigerian police to look at. Like a place like, there's a state you will pick up, a place like, say, Anambra, which a particular party is going to dominate. You will see that the level of violence will be small. But the state across it, which is Enugu, where you have almost 3 parties running, these are the states you watch, especially from 3-4 weeks ago, where people are being assassinated. Where are the hotspots? These are the part of the things I think they should do. Then finally, I think INEC should stand up and do more of strategic communication. INEC, you cannot wait for people to be killed before you say something, or for people to wait till 10 p.m. in the night for you to say that your IRF did not work again. Immediately you notice it, you come out with a news or whatever, telling people we're experiencing this, we're fixing it, because you need to constantly tell the people what is happening. Otherwise, on their own, in this era of disinformation and misinformation, they will create their own information.
Thank you for raising these points. Dr. Kwaja, one of the states in which there was significant violence was Kano State. Although that violence appeared to have been concentrated in only one constituency, mainly in one constituency, and where the member representing that constituency was arrested by the police for murder. He was released on bail yesterday, I think. What's your view of that sad situation in Kano?
It's quite unfortunate that a case of murder that happened during elections 2 weeks ago, the individual, the prime suspect, is being granted bail few days to the election. And I don't want to see Adodogwa as the face of that act alone. So, whether you allow him on bail or not, you are still giving him so much energy. And what I expected from the court was to still keep him in prison, to serve as deterrent to others that will do it, because that will go that way. Because the message we are getting is that because he belongs to the ruling party in the states, and that's what people see, he has been granted bail as a way of also adding to whatever votes the party will get, because of the nature of the election in Kano, where the NPP is seen to be dominating and in a way might clinch the position of might clinch the governorship ticket in the state, and that's why the courts granted him bail. While there are many other individuals that are in prisons right now across the country over situations that might not be as violent as the one that Dogwa is being fingered. And I think it's not good for our democracy. It's not good for our electoral process. It's not good for our criminal justice administration. And it also brings us back to the question of justice. When you read the last wordings of our national anthem, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign, you are dealing with question of justice being on bended knees. People have died, houses destroyed, lives injured, and the person is moving freely under the guise of being on bail. And I think that is something
indeed, it's completely unacceptable. I would agree with you. We've just one more minute. Cynthia, is there any other states you are worried about for Saturday's election?
Lagos is still a state to worry about for the governorship, especially because of the outcome of the last elections. And we really need better and efficient police deployment in Lagos. Rivers also is also another state that we believe better deployment should be done.
Thank you, dear panel, for this wonderful discussion. I think a number of issues have emerged very clearly, that the 2023 general election is a major landmark in the history of Nigerian elections. And the two major points that have been made about the election is that it was planned well, the processes were convincing to Nigerians, but those processes were not fully complied with. And that has affected the legitimacy and the credibility of the elections. However, a lot of you also made the point that many good things happened in these elections. People's votes counted in a lot of the constituencies, and that those gains from the elections are things we should build on. Furthermore, you've all made the point that the next round is coming up on Saturday, and in preparation for that election, let's all come out. Let's insist on exercising our civic responsibility of voting, of waiting to see that the votes are counted, on photographing the evidence of the results, and on spreading that so that all of us Nigerians can contribute in the counting process to ensure that justice, which we all search for in elections, justice defined as the outcome reflecting the choices made by citizens, is done. Thank you very much and good day.